All right, welcome back to the Composer Mindset. This is Daniel. Thanks for joining me. Just want you to please take a moment and like and subscribe if you're on YouTube. Subscribe if you're on Twitch. You can follow me on Twitter. It really helps the channel out to get those subscribers. Give a thumbs up to the videos that you're seeing. And I hope you're enjoying this content. Been having some very good conversations with people over Facebook and Twitter and also on Twitch. So yeah, thanks for joining me today. I have completed my score for spring. That would be here. I found this video on the QTube. Wanted to say thanks again to the people at the QTube for making this service available for composers. They have some pretty awesome stuff there. I think I'm going to be doing another one of their videos, probably starting tomorrow. I am trying to narrow down from two choices here. So today what I'd like to do is give a summary of my scoring process and the composition process. And before I do that, actually, I wanted to mention something that I noticed, and this can happen. So here's the deal. I was actually showing this video to my children this morning because they like cartoons. And I noticed that the mix that I didn't really translate to the TV. And that happens, right? It can be a real pain that you do a mix in your studio, maybe on headphones, and then you listen to it somewhere else and it sounds totally different. And that can really drive you crazy, especially if you're not a professional engineer. I am an engineer because I have to be. I'm a composer first and an engineer second, or maybe third or fourth. But yeah, I noticed there were some issues with the mid-range and the low mids on the TV. Now that could just be the TV. But in any case, I'm going to, after I sign off of this video summary, I'm going to do some adjustments on the mix because it really didn't translate to my ears. So it sounded great in here, but there were some mid-range issues. It sounded a little bit muddy. So I think it'll be a quick cleanup. It'll take a few minutes and then I'll repost the video. In any case, let's get to the summary of this. So let's take a listen. So I have all the sound design turned off, and we can just take a listen to the music. Here we go. Here we go. So that's the music. I'm just going to restart my Twitch stream here. I'm going to keep the video rolling, keep the recording going. Just switch my internet. This time of day, I think kids are in school, on virtual school right now, and everyone's hogging the internet. So just give me 1 second here while that reloads. So yeah, that's my score. Just another point about the mix and the mix translating. You know, I think maybe my mistake was that I mixed the music without having the sound design in there. And the sound design, I'll put that in too. You know, the sound design has a lot of low and low mid frequencies, and it might have just been too much. I think the next mix I do, I'm going to be listening back with the sound design in there as well. When I did the layback, I didn't touch the EQ on the sound design track. And, you know, that's really, really those aren't the decisions that the composer should be making. That would be for the mix engineer or whoever's doing the layback and the director. But I guess since I'm the director, I should have probably done that. So I'm going to do that, and I'll repost the final video. I think it just should be some pretty easy tweaks there. All right, so the stream is back up. And there we go. All right, good. All right, so let me talk through here. Put that back up. So I think, you know, in seeing this video, you know, the visuals of this are magical and hopeful and innocent. We have this little girl, these incredible, I'm going to call them, you know, winter spirits or elemental spirits, and this girl's little dog, right? So it's really just three characters. I mean, I'm going to consider those beasts one character for now. And I really was thinking, because of the nature of the video and because of the nature of the subject matter, instrumentation, well, instrumentation is always important, but I started with instrumentation in my considerations. I was trying to think which instruments would be the most evocative of nature, organic sounds, innocence, magic, things like that, things along those lines, right? There's also, I feel like there's a sort of play, this interplay of power, right? The creatures are giving this little girl this crystal here. I mean, I sort of imagined it that these elemental creatures are maybe the guardians of winter, and maybe this little girl is the guardian of spring or something like that. And so they're exchanging their powers over the elements, right? So we needed to be able to get some kind of power, this feeling of power, this feeling of eventually the majesty. Look at this last shot here of these mountains here. So I kind of factored all that stuff in, and I came up with an instrument list. Obviously, there's the orchestra in there, but I also wanted to have some featured instruments that would evoke those types of feelings, right? So what did I choose? I chose alto flute, I chose tin whistle and low whistle, also santur and solo violin, and there's a little bit of sitar in there as well. So, you know, some instruments, if you consider them to be almost like actors, some actors are very good at playing certain roles. Some actors only play themselves, it seems, and other actors can, you know, dissolve their own ego into the role that they're playing. So, what's his name? Gary Oldman and Christian Bale can always sort of become the character that they're portraying, and other actors can't. So if I think about that in terms of instruments, a violin, violin is going to be usable in so many different genres of music. It's sort of an instrument that can become almost any, that it can play the role it's given very well, no matter what the role is. But other instruments really can't do that, or at least not as much, right? So the tin whistle, for example, it always has, to me anyway, it always has this sort of innocent quality to it, right? The sitar always has, to me, this is very subjective, the sitar always has a sort of a mystical quality to it. And the other ones that I chose, what do I have here? Let me scroll down on my screen. Alto flute and low whistle. I mean, those just have such an organic kind of sound to me. It's evocative of birds and the woods. They have kind of a woody sound. And then with the rest of the instrumentation, I just use that as sort of the foil for building everything else up. All right, so I put a lot of thought into what instruments would really give the most bang for the buck, and I think it turned out pretty well. So we have these featured soloists here. So at the beginning, I guess maybe I'll put on this, and you can hear the alto flute starts here. There. All right, so that alto flute right there, very evocative. It sounds to me like we're in a frozen forest, right? That's what they are, in the ancient frozen forest. So let me just play that alto flute. Right, highly evocative. And then some of the other featured solos here. This little part here where and I'll talk about sort of the compositional elements in a second. I just wanted to go over, let me back up. So here when we have this chase, we have the santur featured and the violin. There's just sort of exotic sounds that I think fit well with the scenery. The santur, violin. I didn't want it to sound like just an orchestra, right? We needed to have something to make the music fit with the scenery. All right, then of course we have this little duet here where I really wanted to portray the innocence of this little girl and her dog. Sort of loyal dog here. So here's just this little solo. And she's just a little girl, but she has command over these elemental creatures and her little dog too. Right, so if we were to imagine that, or to reimagine that in something like trumpet and bassoon, or if the little girl's melody there were in trumpet, it would be just too bright and stately. It just doesn't paint the right picture. Bassoon might work. All right, and then here at the end, of course, the tin whistle comes in. And there's something about tin whistle playing that, I don't know, maybe it's because it's used so much. You got to wonder if the actual instrument has this ability to evoke these types of feelings, or if it's just that it's a nice instrument and it's always used to evoke these types of feelings. I don't know if it's a chicken and the egg situation. In any case, again, we have the girl and her dog featured at the end here, and I have the solo tin whistle as the featured instrument. You can hear that sitar at the end. And those Indian drums, right? So it's sort of a tour of the world. All right, and let me play where the sitar is a little bit more featured here at the beginning. Right here when we have the character introduction of these creatures here. Hold on, actually it's a little bit beforehand. Listen. Just a little splash of that mystical color that the sitar provides. Like I said in a previous video, it's cultural appropriation at its best. There's really just a handful of notes that the sitar plays. And again, the sitar comes in here at the end, sort of the climax of this whole thing. Listen. So I think if those instruments were missing, the score would just feel a bit like traditional film score. And it wouldn't have that, it wouldn't carry the vibe of what the story is, right? It would just be score. Could go with lots of things, right? But the specific solo instruments there that I chose really tie this score to this video, to this film. All right, now in terms of composition, I think I mentioned this when I was spotting the video that, you know, it's a short, it's only about 3.5 minutes or so. And in short films, everything is compressed. The entire story is compressed. That's what makes it a short film. It's right there in the genre. So you don't have a lot of time to develop your ideas. So every idea that you come up with has to, you know, you can't have too many ideas, I guess is what I'm trying to say. So I limited myself to just a few key things. There are some melodic motivic elements that are short, and I tried to use the same elements as much as I could to develop the entire score. I'll show you what those are in just a second. Then I made some harmonic choices and scale choices for sort of the palette that I was using to make my harmonies and to derive melody. So in terms of the scale choice, I was trying to stick with a harmonic scale and a Dorian sort of scale. And I think what makes the score interesting is that they are sort of trading places all the time. So at the beginning, we can hear, let's see. Right there, that big rise up is just going up the harmonic scale. The beginning flute melody is pretty much sticking in the Dorian mode, although it is sort of featuring just these two harmonic choices that I wanted to work with, which was this shifting from a major to minor or minor to major on the same root chord. So for example, it starts in D minor and then it just shifts to D major. And then over here at the end where we have the climax, let me put this up here. Right at this point, we hear the minor then shifting to major as we can feel spring really taking hold. So let me play that. So right when we see the ice melting, we have a big fat, really richly orchestrated D minor chord, and then it shifts right away to major here when things start to grow. So listen for that. All right, so I feel like that sort of represents the exchange of winter to spring, right? That shifting from minor to major. It's small, but I think it's very effective there. And then the other little harmonic move that I wanted to feature was, you can hear it very prominently here. It's just 2 chord changes from D to C, D major to C major. And that was enough to, I think, carry most of the score. Actually, it starts up right here. And the reason I chose that chord change over other ones is I just felt that it had the right emotion to it, right? You can sort of get that chord change out of the harmonic scale, I think. Yes, you can. All right, so it's pulling notes out of that scale. And then for melodic elements, again, I wanted to keep it really simple. We really just have this one melody that I establish here when she's swinging around her stick. Let's listen to that. Let's do that again. That's sort of her theme, which I developed from the very first notes at the beginning of the video. And here we see her theme kind of come back when it's just her. It's a little bit different. Right? And then it comes back again. I think here. Sorry, back it up a little bit. You can hear it sort of develop through this section. So that little girl gets her theme. It's short, it's simple. And then the other element that I had melodically was just simply a rising scale. And to me, that represented just things growing. Simple rising scale. You can hear it featured here in the horns. And then it happens again at the very beginning, right before the title card. Where is it? Right there. So listen, it's pretty obvious when it enters. Right. So on top of the instrumentation choices that I made, a couple very simple harmonic and harmonic and scale choices that I kind of established as just like a color palette of notes to choose from, and like 2 melodic motifs, and that's it. there's not much else happening. There are not a lot of characters. The story is very straightforward. Even here in this chase scene, which is quite a bit different than, this chase scene sticks out in terms of like the flow of this. I was pulling ideas from those elements that I established at the beginning. So let's hear it. All right, so all of those fast-moving melodic elements in the solo violin, in the Santur, even some of the gestures that are being played in the accompanying instruments are all derived just from those couple of melodic motifs that I came up with. All right, so it's sort of trying to make the most out of a small amount of material, and it makes it sound like everything is related. Even some of the chord changes in here are essentially the same move that I was doing before, just sort of you establish a tonality. Most of the time it was D, and then it either moves up a whole step, or down a whole step. That's it. So you can listen to some of the chord shifts in here. Sorry, let me skip ahead. We're watching the chase. So if you listen closely to the solo instruments, you'll hear little bits and pieces of the themes that were played at the beginning, the little girl's theme. It happens very fast, but it's the same material. I mean, it's not exclusively that stuff that I was talking about. It's film score. This isn't like a Bach invention where he might take one melody and use every single element of that melody to create every other element within the composition. Ultimately, whatever you're putting down has to serve the needs of the film that you're working on, or whatever the media is that you're working on. Getting too clever with it, eventually it's just serving your own purposes and not serving the project. All right, so I think that's pretty much it. I can tell you that this little action sequence here was really tricky. And here were some of the elements that were difficult to manage, but I think I managed. All right, so the pace changes extremely fast once she drops her crystal. And what made this very challenging is that there are a lot of edits and things that are timed in the video, like the bouncing of this crystal and some of these footsteps that have a rhythmic quality to them. And that rhythmic quality doesn't always match. Isn't always a musical quality. It's rhythmic in that it's happening again. There's a sort of pattern to it, but it might not match up with the music. So part of the challenge there is trying to get the visual elements to match up to the score, or I should say, trying to get your score to match the visual elements in a musical way. And then also have the music pace itself well enough that it serves the rising action here. So the biggest thing was timing and pacing, right? And then this sudden change. So let's just take a listen to that. I think I got things timed out pretty well. So then, that was a really a challenging thing to do. It sort of reminds me of the scene. Is it from Return of the Jedi when they're on Hoth, the ice planet, and the AT-ATs are walking around? Anyway, so each little scene change here. Look, so it starts off. We follow these different things. First, we follow the skip ahead. First, we follow the bouncing crystal. Sort of picks up the pace. Then the winter elementals, or whatever they are, these creatures, then they start to move and the energy has to pick up again. Then the dog starts to chase, then the energy picks up again. We follow the dog, the energy picks up again, and we see the girl is also following, and we have these different perspective changes. So I tried to match each sort of, it's like sort of ratcheting up. Each thing that happens in sequence ratchets up the tension. So I did that by either adding instruments, upping the, I was making the harmonies come up. So we sort of establish in D, I think it goes up to E. That's ratcheting up. And then ultimately I felt that I couldn't sustain that. And so I made a change at the end here where we see the girl is really booking it to go help her dog and get the crystal. So let's follow that one more time. So at each turn, I had to make a change in the score. First the crystal, then the creatures, then the dog, then the girl. And we see what the dog's up to. And the girl's booking it. We see, like, we get a sense of what's inevitably going to happen, right? There's something coming. So that picks up there. And then, of course, it's revealed that the cliff is coming. And we can imagine in our heads what's happening. And then I finally needed to change. Okay, so that's the dog's fate for now, is that he hit the rock. And then eventually I had to change the texture a little bit in order to keep things going. I felt like it couldn't sustain, that texture couldn't sustain all the way through. And it had to build up to this part where the dog is going to get crushed. So let's hear that play out. Just gradually increasing the texture, upping the harmonic tension, adding more instruments, adding faster rhythms until I couldn't anymore and I had to change it. So let's watch. Okay, so now it's got to change again. All right, picking up a little more. Harmonic change. Sort of a mini climax at that spot. Then at this point the whole thing needed to change. I just couldn't keep that energy going because look, it had a bit of a break in the action, right? Sort of, because all right, one element of the tension is sort of resolved. This dog is out of action, right? Plus we really want to see, okay, this girl is super concerned here. And then sort of the high point of that is that moment right there. So it was all building up to that. All right, and then I think the most satisfying part is here. This was like I think the most fun part for me to score was this growing thing, because really, I think it was just like you just needed to make the music as beautiful and luscious as possible. And let's watch that. All right. And Yara, I see your comments there. I'm going to address those in just a second. All right, where are we here? right, so there I think it was a lot more obvious what to do. Is just this constant build up. Now, of course, as you're writing it, you think it's obvious, and then when you have the director come and take a look and a listen, then he tells you that everything you did was not obvious and you need to change it. But there was no director here. Anyway, so I think that was pretty obvious what to do there. Definitely not as much of a challenge in terms of like the the nuts and bolts of film scoring, like in this action sequence where the cuts are really fast and there's a whole lot going on there. That is really a technical challenge where you have to sort of get everything to fit just perfectly with all these different little changes in the scenery. But I think that took the most time. Anyway, all the details of that and how I did it are on YouTube and all the videos. So let's see. Yar is back. Guess who's back? Yar is back. No thematic ideas that I repeat. Oh, well, just get the tempo to match what's happening on the screen. So regarding that, yeah, listen, getting a theme, sometimes I find it's best just to get anything down. So getting thematic material is really challenging. I can't tell you what to do, but I can tell you what I do. In terms of getting thematic material, I try to get some descriptors. I look at the characters, I watch the video, and I make descriptors for myself about, like, what do these characters feel like? Are they good guys? Are they bad guys? What do they represent? Are they driven? Are they energetic? Are they annoying? Are they magical? Are they whatever? Just come up with descriptions. So like when I saw this girl, okay, she's a child. She seems to have some magical ability. She's in command of these creatures. She's very mature, but she's still very innocent. And I start trying to plug those descriptions of the characters or the story or the vibe of the story into musical concepts. What type of music or what type of instrument or what type of music, what facets of music can I use to represent those adjectives, right? So what sounds innocent, what sounds powerful, what sounds magical? And it could be melodies, it could be scales, it could be harmonic progressions, it could be actual harmonies themselves, it could be orchestration, it could be all of the different things that you use to create your score just simply reflect and enhance those descriptors of the characters and the story and then the plot. And then as you do that more and more, you get faster with it. Like as soon as I saw this, I immediately started coming up with ideas in my head of what would make those descriptors come to life through the music. And I try to keep it really simple. Start with the simplest theme. Or I didn't even start with a theme. I just started with a scale choice, right? I said, well, I really like the sound of the harmonic scale, that sharp 5 and flat 7 have a certain quality to them that I associate with a sort of magical quality. And I think other composers have done the same. And then in terms of getting things, yeah, it's difficult enough to just get the tempo to match what's happening on the screen and landing on the beats. All I can say is that just comes through practice. And, here on this is my mix session, and I didn't import any of the tempo data. When you go through and spot your video, your film or whatever you're working on, and you start coming up with descriptors, like I said, and then I start marking out in my score, in my session, I should say, I start marking out just edits. So, I just drop in markers. And I'm going to be doing another spotting session on a new video from the QTube. I think I'm going to start tomorrow. So Yar, if you can come back tomorrow, I'm going to be going through this whole process again. All right, so you start finding your edits, you start finding emotional beats, So, in some spots, it's simply a cut, right? So here we cut from these legs of these creatures to the dog. Now, not every edit that you put in, not every edit that you mark is going to be significant in your score. If you're trying to hit absolutely every beat, every edit, every emotional beat, it's probably impossible. Some of them just need to be skipped over, and you need to prioritize ones that are more important. So, for example, in this section right here, I think what the director is trying to show is the peril that the dog is in when he's dodging these footsteps. And so I marked out each footstep in my session, and I found a tempo that worked for these footsteps in this scene, in that shot, I should say. But as the scene develops and we get this long shot of the dog, I wasn't trying to match the musical hits to the footsteps of these creatures, right? It was really more about the energy of it. So here, let me play this back in this section right here. So you can hear that I musically, I found each footstep for the first part, but then I ignored it for the second. It didn't seem as important. Okay, I think we could start here. Right? And if you hear it, I was able to get the first footstep on a downbeat, the second footstep on a downbeat, but then the third footstep was on an offbeat. And if that's what the video has, then that's what you've got. That's what you've got to do. Okay, hang on. We've got more from Yar here. It's tricky, man. It's super tricky. Almost got to the end of the chase scene. Hold on. It is challenging. Get the mark, hit them pretty well. It's just something I'm not used to. Yeah, it takes a lot of work, and all I can say is that I remember the first time I was scoring to picture, and I thought, oh, this is going to be easy, but it's a totally different ball game than just writing music for itself. Totally different. Okay, it's not totally different. You're still writing music. It's just other considerations. But the more you do it, the faster it gets, and your instincts start to develop too. And that's probably the most important part, is having your instincts for this honed. And I mean, obviously you can always do better. I always feel like I can do better every time I'm done with a project. I think, all right, here's what I did well, and here's what I didn't do so well. In fact, maybe I should talk about that right now, and then I'll wrap this summary up. I thought it was going to be 20 minutes, 45 minutes, so I should probably wrap it up. So here's what I think I did well. I think I ended really strong. To me, and again, opinion, just opinion, the way that this scene develops, to me, I feel like I captured the essence of the magic and the beauty of spring, especially through to the end. And then at the last two shot here, sort of got the innocence of our characters in that too. In terms of what I think I didn't do so well, I think this chase scene could have been a bit tighter. This was, again, the hardest part. I feel like the action didn't develop as well as maybe I could have. Maybe could have made some different choices through this action sequence. I feel like it sort of takes us out of that magical vibe a little bit. I didn't want it to make it seem like these were evil creatures. That was, I think, one of the important things that I got from the spotting, is that at no point was this supposed to be like terror, right? It was tension, fear, but not terror. And I think I was pushing a little bit into terror, right? Definitely not terror. So probably could have done that a bit better. And then also the introduction, I don't know, it just doesn't seem to me as strong compositionally as the end. And in terms of the strength of the writing, I feel like the beginning is the weakest, the middle is a bit stronger, and then it finishes really strong. But again, my opinions. And also, I had an issue here with the mix. I started talking about that, listening back on my TV when I was showing this to my kids. I have some mid-range issues that I'm going to take care of right now and re-upload. But all I can say, Yar, is, get your markers down and prioritize some over the others. And of course, the most important thing is going to be prioritizing the emotion and making sure that you hit the emotional beats and the changes in the sort of the narrative more than edits, right? A lot of edits I marked out and I didn't score to. I didn't hit them precisely. I just wanted to get some of the emotional beats. So I think at the end it's very strong. Perhaps in the middle and the chase, it could have been better. Having a director with you and collaborating with a good director, I find always makes the process better. Having a second set of ears and someone with the right vision, or with a different vision, or with the global vision of the entire project, can help. They can say, oh, okay, this point is just not the right feel. Like I was saying, the monsters, they're not monsters. I keep saying monsters. The creatures are not monsters. It's not terror. You need to dial it back or change the tone or change the instrumentation. I'm getting the feel of terror here. It's not a horror. It's not a horror picture. Right? So as composers, well, I'll speak for myself. As a composer and a human being, I tend to get lost in the project, and sometimes you can't see the forest for the trees. And in this film, the trees are walking. All right? Yara, I was going to invite you, if you'd like to discuss your project, if you're open to that, on the next session, on the next streaming session, if you want to talk about it, or if you want to hit me up on YouTube, you can send me a message through the YouTube email. I think you're a subscriber. Or you can even visit my site and you get my email there if you want. And if you want to talk about any of this, we can either do it privately, or if you want to do it on the live stream, it's up to you. If you want to discuss, I certainly want to make that open to the viewers. Part of the idea with this channel was to get some discussion like this. Hopefully some of my ideas can help, and if you have ideas that can help me, I'm always open to that. In any case, that's gonna, I think, wrap it up for this composition. I'm gonna go back right now and just make a couple of changes to the mix and kind of open up the low mids a little bit, I think, to make some room for the sound design, and just clean it up a tiny bit, and then I'll repost the video onto YouTube. And then tomorrow, unless Yar wants to hop on and talk about his project, then I'm going to be starting something new. There was, I think, a horror project on QTube and also a documentary type project that I can't decide which one I want to do. Maybe I'll do both. Not both at once, but I'll make that decision tonight and I'll get started tomorrow. So that's it for now. I really appreciate you watching. If you like this content, I hope you subscribe. I'm on YouTube and live on Twitch. You can follow my Twitter stream. I'm always posting on there when I'm going to be live streaming. And as always, I put these on YouTube to review. Thanks so much for watching. That's it for now. Bye.